this moment is so critical that we come out, that we make our voices heard, that we say that we want the state of Israel to stand for the values that it was founded upon, and that we will not speak silence in the diaspora while these things happen. And I think there's a lot of energy here tonight of people saying that we are supportive of Israeli civil society. We're standing with protesters in Tel Aviv and around Israel who are saying that, you know, this is too far. Red lines are being crossed every day.
That's awesome. Joe, thank you so much. I was hoping that you could also chat with us a little bit. As you mentioned, very humbly, Joe is the new chair of the board of JSpace Canada. If you can hear me over the noise there, can you talk to folks a little bit about what got you involved in this work and why you are so passionate about what you're doing at JSpace Canada?
Absolutely. So I spent a decade working in the Jewish Federation movement and ended my Federation career as the CEO of the London Jewish community, and really felt challenged by these things that, you know, we had taught children, we taught ourselves, we had learned in the Canadian Jewish community about what Israel stands for. And we believe those things because they're important and they're powerful, you know, equality, justice, freedom, peace. And then we saw that what was happening was not quite aligned with those values, and that there were real challenges, and we see the manifestation of those challenges today. We see the undermining of Israeli democracy in action every day. And I said, you know, at that point, it's too far. We need to stand up and we need to make our voices heard as progressive Zionists, as lovers of the state of Israel, and say that this is too far, and we're going to make sure that we are heard both in Canada, in the Jewish community, in our government, but also in Israel.
Amazing. Love it. Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot for a second. I hope you have this while I ask this question. Hi.
Can we show you the people? Can we show you?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm going to turn the camera. No, I can't do it. I'll just hold it like this. Hello. Look how many people came. There is a special sign that I want you to see. Can you hold your sign to the online, please?
I love Israel and I am horrified by the new government.
Look how many came. That is very exciting.
Amazing, amazing. One of you, I hope you have this on you. Can you show us? Oh, I want to see the signs. Kulanu Oreitan. Can you show us the signs? Amazing. Love it. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Reut and Joe. I'm going to let you both get back to it. We're going to come back to you towards the end, and we're going to see how things are going at the end, all right? Thank you so much. Excellent. Wow, that's incredible. As someone who left Toronto a couple of years ago, I can't imagine ever going out in that cold again. So, Yasher Koach them. So in addition to the virtual gathering and the in-person gathering, we also got some of our friends together in Israel to chat with us. You're probably thinking, wait a second, it's 5 a.m. there right now. Did you wake them up? We did not. We pre-recorded some videos with them as well, and I want to share those with you tonight. The first video that I want to share is from someone who I consider a huge inspiration and a force in Israel. It's Shaked Morad, the executive director of Peace Now, Shalom Achshav. Peace Now, Shalom Achshav is an Israeli liberal advocacy and activist group with the aim of promoting a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And I will mention as well, we are joined in partnership tonight and at this event by Canadian Friends of Peace Now.
Dear friends, thank you for being with us today. My name is Shaked Morad and I am the head of Peace Now, Shalom Achshav, Israel's longest-standing peace movement. Usually, we fight against the occupation of the West Bank and against the creeping annexation of the West Bank to Israel. But today, with the current far-right government, We find ourselves fighting against the annexation of Israel to the most extreme settlements. This government was born and raised in Itzhar and Itamar, in Hebron and Kiryat Arba. These people, if allowed, are going to implement a regime of Jewish supremacy over the entire land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. We are not going to let this happen. We, the people who favor peace, justice, and security over land, we who believe in a Jewish and democratic state, we are going to stand against this extreme government. Our people are protesting right now in the streets. It's so meaningful to us to know that you, the Jewish communities around the world, are standing with us in this fight. I want to thank Canadian Friends of Peace Now for supporting us along the years in this current fight. I want to thank JSpace for taking the moment and raising this so important event. Guys, I really hope to see you soon on more positive occasions. But in the meanwhile, let's fight together. Let's bring Israel back to track, to the state we are dreaming of. Thank you.
That was wonderful. Thank you to Shaked. In addition to some of these videos that we're sharing, we also have a guest who is actually able to join us in person tonight, all the way from New York. I want to invite Kenneth Bob. Ken is the national president of Amenu and the chair of Project Rosanna USA, an international NGO that builds bridges of trust between Israelis and Palestinians through healthcare. He is a member of the Jewish Agency of Israel Board of Governors and is the J Street board treasurer. In addition to that, Ken also just recently returned from Israel, where he took part in the protests last weekend. And I'd like to talk to him a little bit about that. Ken, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. It's really great to be joining this incredible event tonight with you.
Wonderful. I wanted to ask you, as someone who was on the ground, I think last weekend at the protests, there's a lot of issues that the Israeli public is on the streets protesting against right now. A lot going on. What stuck out to you as kind of the main issues, the things that are most important, the things that you really are hearing throughout the streets?
So you make an interesting point, Maytal, because as you know, there are so many different concerns about the direction of this new government, including this dismantling of the judiciary and religion and state issues and LGBTQ rights and education, status of Arab citizens, and the occupation. And all of these issues can properly be placed under the umbrella of the word democracy. But the focuses of the demonstrations last week, and again, the incredible demonstrations in Israel earlier tonight, I'm sure people saw it. Looks like in all the cities together, around 150,000 people were in the streets between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, Herzliya, Haifa, Beersheva. I mean, it was incredible. And the overarching issue that these demonstrations are about is the dismantling of the judiciary system. And I think that's for two reasons. One, on all these laundry list of issues I just mentioned, the one that has active legislation in front of the Knesset is actually the judiciary issue. And so the purpose of these demonstrations is somehow to influence that process. Secondly, I think this is important for us to think about from a strategic point of view. This is an issue that can rightly bring out outrage from both the left and the right in Israel, across the political spectrum. And I'll give you an example. At a rally, one rally today, Ami Ayalon, the former head of the Shin Bet and a leader of the longtime peace activist, and Gidon Sar, the immediate past Minister of Justice, who's formerly from the Likud, both spoke at a rally, same rally. Secondly, at a different protest, author David Grossman, a longtime liberal lion of Israeli society, and Bogi Ya'alon, the former defense minister under Netanyahu, also spoke at the same rally. So this is in a way a remarkable development, perhaps a bit of a remnant of the most recent government, and hopefully an opportunity to really mobilize Israeli society in a broad way.
Amazing. That's really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. So you talked about mobilizing Israeli society. Let's talk about the work that we're starting to do on the ground here in the diaspora. You're obviously very connected to work happening in Israel, and you're very involved in diasporic Zionist work in the US as well. So what advice would you give us? How can we keep this momentum going? You know, we saw all the folks on the street in Toronto. There's over 100 of us here on this Zoom right now. What should we keep doing, and how do we make that support known?
You know, this is a challenging area. You know, how do we both express our love for Israel and also our deep criticism and how challenged we are by certain Israeli government policies? I'd suggest two things. First of all, you already had Shaked from Peace Now speaking to us today. I think it's important that we actually support these groups on the lines, on the lines, you know, the barricades in Israel. And this can be done through donating money, publicizing their messages through social media, talking about them in conversations in the Jewish community, be it in synagogues, federation circles. Let our Jewish community know in the diaspora in Canada that there's these organizations on the ground where we can proudly support and through them show our love for Israel. Secondly, I would not be afraid to actually speak out about this joint concern coupled with our love. Sometimes people say, well, I don't feel like I should have to say I love Israel, but every time I criticize Israel. But actually, I think it's a powerful message. This and can be explained to the Jewish community without any sense of embarrassment, any worry that you're going to be viewed as less of a Zionist or less of an active Jew by showing support for these hundreds of thousands of Israelis who are as concerned as we are. So I think this is a time for us not to be quiet, not to hold back, and actually insert ourselves in every Jewish space and bring our views forward.
Amazing. Ken, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for sharing your experience. It was wonderful to get to see you. Hopefully we'll see you in person. Maybe we'll see you in person in Israel and under better circumstances. Thank you so much.
And congratulations on this event. It's wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. That was awesome. So I actually want to jump right off of what Ken was talking about in terms of how we support folks on the front lines in Israel doing this work, talking about them, elevating their voices. And I think that's an amazing segue to elevate the voice of someone who I think is just so incredible, is one of the most influential voices in shared society activism in Israel today. Sally Abed is a Palestinian citizen of Israel and a member of the national leadership of Standing Together, a grassroots movement mobilizing Jewish and Palestinian citizens of Israel in pursuit of peace, equality, and social and climate justice. You may actually be familiar with Sally's voice if you listen to either the Promise podcast or Groundwork. And if you don't, I highly recommend checking those out. We're going to go over to Sally. Sally, how are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us this evening. So, as the protests grow in Israel, we're in the third week now, and we're seeing a lot of different industries, a lot of different special interest groups are joining. You've got lawyers, you've got high tech, etc. I'm curious, for Standing Together in particular, I know you guys are organizing a lot around these protests, and so I'm wondering, what's the number one message that you're showing up with when you show up with Standing Together at the protests?
Our main message throughout the whole of the different protests that we're having is Bait Shel Kulanu, Hada Baitana Jami'an. This is all of our home. I think now more than ever, you exactly mentioned it. There's so much energy and there's so much different groups trying to really mobilize and their interests are on stake. And it's not just professional sectors, right? We're talking different communities, different groups, and it's extremely
I think that we just lost Maytal. So we'll give Maytal a second to get back on because she has the.
Sorry, my Zoom crashed.
That's what it looks like. Yes.
Can you hear me now? Can you see me now?
I can hear you. I can't see you though.
Yeah, can't see me.
There we go. Okay. We can't hear Sally.
You know, the home for all of us. It is a direct response to Ben Gvir's elections campaign, which says mi ba'al bayt, who's the landlord, or who's and obviously he's insinuating it's the Jewish people, and I'm not even sure he thinks it's all of the Jewish people, by the way. And it's really important for us to really give an alternative.
That's great. That's great. Kind of on that note, there is a lot of conversation, obviously a lot of conversation and analysis around like what needs to happen next, and what's going to happen. Is there going to be a new political party? How do we revive the left? You know, these aren't new conversations. These aren't things that have come up before. But I'm wondering, you bring a different and very unique perspective to this. You're non-Jewish. You're a Palestinian citizen of Israel. So I'm curious for you, what would you want to see happen
next? I'm just going to comment on what you said before. Energies are extremely good. You know, mass mobilization is important for change, especially when it happens at extreme times and deep crises. It's not enough. It's not enough. I don't think, unfortunately, there are not a lot of organized groups within these mass mobilizations. And it is scary in a sense that, you know, we're going to have 2011 all over again in many ways. And I do think that they're much more on stake right now. It is much worse in many ways. As a Palestinian, what I would like to see is that's really a very deep question for me. I'll tell you why, because I'm always in constant, as a leadership of a political movement, and I'm a key player in all of this. Unfortunately, I find myself all the time strategizing of how to move all these mass mobilizations more to the left, move them to talk more about the occupation, talk more about the systemic discrimination of Palestinians, Palestinian citizens, talk more about the Bedouin community, which will be so heavily targeted, you know. And I always am thinking that's what I want. I want us to talk more about these things. I'm less thinking about the final product of how it will look like. But I do think, now that you're asking, you know, it needs to be, we need to have a stronger, more organized groups that have that common vision of a wider us, which at the moment it doesn't really exist, unfortunately. I'm going to be very honest. You know, most of the people that are there, they're not, they don't understand why we need to talk about even the cost of living or housing or, of course, the occupation, and not just about the Supreme Court and saving the Supreme Court, which for us as Palestinians, you know, it never protected our rights, never. We don't have that relationship with the Supreme Court or with the Israeli Jewish democracy, right? So I do hope that we will be able to expand that conversation, because it's much more complex than that. Not to undermine the danger of this reform, really, but to really understand that it's much more complex than that, and there are other groups that perceive the threat of this government in a much different way. And I do hope that we'll be able to build a stronger infrastructure, grassroots infrastructure, that will be able to provide alternatives throughout the next 4 years or whatever this government will last for.
That's great.
That was a very long answer.
No, it was great. It was excellent. Much appreciated. And actually, my next and last question, I think that kind of leads into it really well, which is, a lot of times the questions that we ask, especially in the diaspora, because we feel very far away, we ask the question of, you know, what can we do from here to help? I want to switch the question around a little bit, and I want to ask you, the next time any of us are visiting Israel, you know, there's kind of the like typical things that we always all do, no matter how many times we've been there. So I want to get from your perspective, what is something that you would recommend that we do to see that other side and to have that bigger conversation? How can we experience Palestinian joy, resistance, resilience? What would you recommend for us?
Go to places that are more go to the peripheries, and not just Palestinians, by the way. You can go to the peripheries. If you go to Beersheba, for example, today, there's an amazing lineup. We really pushed for a lineup that is representative of the Bedouin community as well. Just go to more Jewish Arab stands in the peripheries. I do think that there are far more interesting things, far less people, but far more interesting things happening, because you see much more unlikely alliances and unlikely partnerships and when you have that, you absolutely challenge the status quo, and you challenge and the status quo is not just about it's not just this new government, it's also just the fact that people don't want to, they're subscribing, unfortunately, to the conditions of this new government and of the right of no Palestinian flags, or don't talk about the occupation, or, you know, don't complicate things. Let's just stop the reform of the Supreme Court. But our threat right now is so big that we need to be braver than ever. We really need to be braver than ever, and we shouldn't subscribe to the new government's conditions, and just go to the peripheries, to the stands there. And I do think that you will find more Palestinians, you'll find more Haredi, you'll find more people that are underrepresented in the mass mobilizations in the center.
Sally, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everything that you are doing. You know, we can't be there in person, but we are all there in spirit, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Sally Abed of Standing Together. If you haven't heard her speak before, I think probably now you understand why I introduced her the way that I did. She is absolutely wonderful, and I hope that we all take some of her advice and some of her words of wisdom. We have one last video interview that I want to share with you tonight. And another partner organization that we actually have here tonight is Meretz Canada. Meretz is a left-wing social democratic labor Zionist party in Israel. And I'd like to welcome to speak with us former Knesset minister with the Meretz party, Mossi Raz. I already gave you a quick introduction at the beginning of this video, so we're going to jump right into the questions. The first thing that I wanted to talk to you about is, for a lot of our attendees here tonight, they know you were part of the last coalition government with Meretz. It became known as the Change Government. We saw a coalition of left, right, center, Jews, Arabs working as a part of a coalition. It gave us some hope. It was short-lived. We are now in a situation where we see something completely different. We see the rise of an extremist, ultra-nationalist, very extreme right-leaning government taking office right now. And I was hoping that you could talk to us a little bit about, you know, from your perspective, what's going on within Israeli society, what's going on within the political structure that has caused this dramatic shift to the right in the way we're seeing?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Metal. First, I must say, I don't see a dramatic shift. We have a dramatic shift in the coalition. We didn't have a dramatic shift in the election results. This far-right coalition, which actually we talk about four parties: Likud, Shas, Yadut HaTorah, and Tzionut Datit. All of them together got in the elections only 48%. The problem was that our camp, the people who represent the previous government, we were not united and we were not organized. So this is why more than 3% of people, of the voters who voted for Meretz just got nothing. About 3% of the voters who voted for Balad got nothing. So actually we threw 6% of our votes, and now we are only 46 or 45%, while they are 48, which is way more. So I don't see a real shift in the Israeli society. There was some small shifts. If we talk about why people voted for the far right and not only to the Likud, because they felt unsecure, they wanted somebody very tough, to act in a violent way against the Palestinians. Why people voted Yesh Atid instead of voting Meretz and Labour, because they wanted somebody who is charismatic, they wanted to be part of the largest party, maybe didn't want to vote for Social Democratic Party, but those are only small shifts. Basically, we are in this, the elections were not really different, but because of the threshold, and because 6% of our votes are not even counted, we have this far right, very dangerous government.
Okay, thank you. When it comes to you personally and your political career and your political activism, if folks follow Mossi on Twitter, I do. You are everywhere all the time. I'm a little bit convinced that there might be more than one of you because of how often we see you out in the streets. We see you in Sheikh Jarrah on Friday, in the occupied territories, protesting against settlement expansions, and now with these protests on Saturday nights out in the streets as well. And so for those of us who are gathered here virtually, and for those who are going to be in the streets as well in Toronto, why do you feel that it's so important to be out in the streets, to be raising your voice against something that you feel is unjust and unequitable?
I feel that, I go to Sheikh Jarrah and on and off, but in the last years, every Friday, for years, for say 12 years, every Friday. First, I feel that I express my view, I express my voice, I raise my voice, but more than that, I think that this is part of political education to many people who come to those protests and then stand more and more and study more and more and create some new projects. In the end of the day, it seems like we are losers, and we are only less than 0.5% of the Israeli society. But remember that if you talk about kids, yes, I have 2 kids. And people who vote for the right wing have 5, 6, 7 kids. So the young generation is very, very right wing and the Orthodox and ultra-Orthodox. But in spite of that, we are still in the 50-50 situation because many people are leaving the religion, meeting us in the streets, in the protest, and join us. So this is why I think it's extremely important. The demonstrations every Friday in Sheikh Jarrah, the demonstration every Saturday night in Tel Aviv and all over the country and Toronto. I really appreciate that. You are far away and it's not really touching you, and probably the weather in Toronto is not that nice like in Tel Aviv, especially now, end of January. It's really, I really appreciate that. And if you can send photos, I will tweet them, and because awesome. It's really, I feel that it's really a very important support for us.
Thanks. That actually leads really nicely into my next question, which is, for Jews in the diaspora, so many of us feel incredibly connected to Israel. We go through Zionist education and Zionist summer camps from the time that we are kids. We come to Israel on Birthright, March of the Living, various trips. It is absolutely the relationship between diaspora Jewry and Israelis is strong. I hope that it is still strong. I hope it continues to be strong. And so I'm curious to hear from you then, as we are here in the diaspora, half a world away, but care so deeply about what is happening. what do you suggest that we do from here to help what you are doing there on the ground?
What you're doing is extremely important. The fact that we know that people abroad, in Toronto, in New York, in other places, support us. I think, much of the difference between us and the right-wing coalition, the right-wing government, is that we see Israel as Jewish democratic state, while they see it as Jewish state. Now, if you talk about Judaism, you have to remember that the majority of the Jews abroad are not really supporting the right wing, especially not in America, yes, Canada and US. So I think it's extremely important to show that to our opponents, to the government, to the people who support the government, that they have to know that if they go on with this attitude of hatred to Reform Jews, to conservative Jews, to LGBT, to Palestinians, if they go on with this hatred, they can lose the Jewish nation abroad, the Jewish people abroad. And then it's going to be a different state if it's not the state of the Jewish people.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time here tonight, Mossi. Thank you for taking these questions.
Thank you, Metal, and I'm very happy to talk to you and that you go out to the streets, probably in a very terrible and cold weather, and thank you for doing that.
So Mossi Raz was equally concerned about judiciary reform as he was about us being called on the street. Which is wonderful. So thank you to Mossi. Great to hear from all of our speakers. Really appreciate having them and that they gave their time to us and chose to join us. In addition to the speakers that joined us, we also have tonight quite a few partner organizations. We've mentioned some of them, but I really want to take the time now in our last 15 minutes or so to hear from each of these partners. We're going to be brave and we're going to be judicious, but I would like to spotlight the work of every organization that has chosen to be here with us tonight. And I want to start with David Burson from Amenu Canada.
Hi, I'm thrilled to be here this evening. Amenu Canada means, Amenu means our people, and we are a progressive Zionist, liberal Zionist organization that exists in 4 other countries, in Brazil, in the States, and in Australia. And we are very much nurtured from alumni of Habonim Jor. We're really thrilled that Machane Gesher and Machane Miriam are part of the partner organizations here this evening. And a lot of our work is about working in partnership with the Israelis and Palestinians to educate leaders, both in Israel and in the diaspora, in order to be able to continue to create generations of leadership. A lot of people have grown up as socialist Zionists in our movements, and we really want to encourage them to be a part of speaking out and being and speaking up and making their voices heard. And that's very much what we are about. And I think that the final thought that I would like to leave people with is, and this was something that recurred in the rally in Tel Aviv tonight, was, what will you tell your children and your grandchildren about where you were when these things were happening in Israel? And, when it was being destroyed by criminals, where were you when it came for the fight for Israel's democracy? So I want to say kol hakavod to JSpace for bringing all of us together, and wish everybody a great evening. And please make your voices heard and speak up. It makes a lot of difference for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I'm going to go now to Bob Katz, chair of the board for Canadian Friends of Peace now.
Hi, I'm actually just the Toronto chair. Gabriella Gallagher is here and she's our national chair.
Thank you.
But I really want to thank you, Maital, for the tremendous amount of work you did in a very short period of time. Last week, I received a letter from a woman criticizing our participation in the Vigil. She described herself as a progressive Zionist, but warned that we were giving anti-Semites and Israel haters fuel by participating in a vigil that criticized Israel. And I wrote back and explained that anti-Semites who claimed that Canadian Jews were only loyal to Israel would have a field day if Canadian Jews were not prepared to call out discriminatory, anti-democratic government. We cannot pretend to be blind to the occupation, nor to a cabinet that includes avowed fascists. So I'm thrilled to see so many colleagues standing together this evening, and I firmly believe that our message will be heard throughout the halls of Knesset. And just to be sure, I'm going to Israel next month, and I look forward to presenting part of tonight's message to several MKs who I anticipate I will be meeting. We're representing Canadian Friends of Peace Now. Peace Now, and you've already heard from Shaked, was Israel's first progressive Zionist peace organization, founded in 1978 by members of the military and security establishment who were afraid that Israel would blow the chance to make peace with Egypt. And fortunately, they didn't blow that chance. Canadian Friends of Peace Now, which as far as I know is the oldest or longest standing Canadian Zionist progressive organization, was founded 2 years later in 1980. And anyone who wants to learn more about it, I'm not going to do that in a few moments here, please visit our website, or even better, not even better, or at least as good, next Sunday at 11 o'clock, we're having a webinar in which Shaked, who you've already heard, and our counsel, Michael Svar, will discuss Greater Israel Movement and the implications for democracy in quite a bit more depth than we can do in this short talk now. And now a word from our sponsor. Any progressive Zionist with time, commitment, and energy would be welcome to contact us through our website. We are always looking for volunteers. We are a volunteer-driven organization, and your help is welcome. And if you don't have time to volunteer, what the heck, send us a check. Thanks very much.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Bob. I'm going to go now to two folks who are doing incredible work. I want to bring Barbara Landau and Shahid Akhtar speak to us about the Canadian Alliance of Jews and Muslims. Oh, and I'll get you to unmute there, Barbara.
Unmute. Okay, and there's Shahid. Okay, welcome. Yes. Thank you, Joe, Maytal, and David. I'm here with several hats. First of all, the former JSpace Canadian board member, JSpace Canada board. So proud of JSpace's role in organizing this demonstration and this wonderful evening, and proud of all the co-sponsors. Raising our voices together with shared values is so powerful. And second, I'm here with Alon Liel, former Israeli ambassador to South Africa at the time of Mandela. We co-created J-Link, and you've already seen Ken Bob, who is on our coordinating committee. It's an international network of progressive Jewish organizations representing 7 continents. And third, I'm here with Shahid Akhtar as co-chair, and he's the founder of the Canadian Association of Jews and Muslims. We've been standing together as allies against all forms of prejudice and racism for over 20 years. Shahid and I are honored to raise our voices in support of the many thousands of Israelis, Jews and Palestinians who are advocating for universal values, human rights, equality for all, and protection of an independent judiciary, without which there is no claim to democracy. I want to echo Sally Abed's call for us to be courageous allies for all, Israelis, and I'm standing together with Sally. As so many of us, my relatives came to Canada to escape persecution in search of the very values that we are advocating for all Israelis. I want Israel to succeed, but not the Israel that denies what was promised in its Declaration of Independence. Not an Israel that may marginalize, threaten, or exclude people based on their identity, such as who's a Jew, LGBTQ, Palestinians, or asylum seekers. Not an Israel that threatens civil society organizations, Jewish and Palestinian. Many of the organizations that are co-sponsoring this event tonight are under threat. Not an Israel whose policies are evaporating the hope of two sovereign states living peacefully together. Not an Israel whose policies will incite violence and threaten the security of everyone. The only road to peace is an end to the occupation. Today, as a strong and broad coalition of progressive organizations, we are asking our Canadian government to stand with us and courageously advocate for its own well-accepted policies. But we need to hear the words spoken loudly and clearly, not whispered in a back room. We need Canada to speak from its values and not hide under a cloak of fear that what they are saying won't be popular politically. Every political party in Canada and Jews of all political stripes have agreed with our stated Canadian policy. Canada, I'm quoting, Canada is committed to the goal of a comprehensive.
I actually had so many tea towels. Actually, I got a bunch of tea towels, almost the same color. Oh, perfect.
Could I ask if people could be muted while we're talking? Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so Canada is called on for a just and lasting peace in the Middle East, including the creation of a Palestinian state living side by side in peace and security with Israel. We cannot stand by when the proposed policies of Israel's government are a complete denial of our Canadian policy. We need more than platitudes. We want Canada to use its skills as a trusted international intermediary to call on all democracies to hold fast to their values and call on Israel to step back from the brink of racism and an incitement to violence in the interest of its own future security and international respect. And now I'm turning the mic over to Shahi for a quick comment. Yes, join me.
Well, thank you very much, Barbara, and thanks JSpace for giving me this opportunity. Actually, it's very hard to add much to, Barbara, what you have said on behalf of Canadian Association of Jews and Muslims. The only thing I would say is, you know, there's a wise saying that even the darkest clouds have silver lining. So as a consequence of this outrageous injustices enacted and planned by the right-wing extremists, many more have united in the cause of supporting the victim of organized bigotry and hate who would otherwise have stood on the sidelines. Well, we all know that what happens in Israel and Palestine has a tendency of not staying there. The tentacles of conflict crawl out. Muslims and Jews all over the world react viscerally to each act of violence, provocation, and oppression, and Canada is no exception. The Canadian Association of Jews and Muslims was founded 27 years ago as the first organization here dedicated to bilaterally promoting alliance between Jews and Muslims. We continue to strive to export the Canadian model of dialogue and treating opposing sides with equal respect and dignity, rather than importing the conflict here with its hatred, prejudice, and intolerance. We strongly believe that if our two communities solidly unite as partners, one of the most powerful alliances of the 21st century can be built to bring peace to the Middle East and indeed to the world at large. This demonstration of unity today is not only sending out a message to Israel and Palestine, but also to the Canadian government that it should take stand in support of the victim and not be blindly one-sided. Similarly, Canadian community, religious and political leaders must not apply double standard when it comes to the violence and violation of fundamental human rights, no matter who the perpetrator is. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm going to go over to Jonah Greenhut now from Camp Gesher.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm Jonah, and I'm here on behalf of Camp Gesher, a summer camp that is part of Habonim Dror North America, or HDNA. Our sister camp Miriam is the other one in Canada. They were unable to join us tonight, but I speak to represent HDNA as a whole. So as a community, we strive to help our campers learn and strengthen their value of youth empowerment, Judaism, social justice, and most importantly, to help foster a connection with Israel. Not only do we engage in Israeli education, but we also provide our campers and staff the opportunity to dive right into the complexities and joys of Israel by traveling for either a summer on a program called MBI or spending the year in Israel, which I luckily got to participate in last year on workshop. We share in the heartbreak of our Israeli campers, families, staff, and all those affected because of the increasing threats to the already fragile Israeli democracy. As a member of HDNA, we also feel for our sister movement located in Israel, Hanor Ha'aved Ve'alomed, who are one of the largest youth movements in Israel, not just for Jews or Druze, but for everyone who calls themselves Israeli, or who is in that area of the world. We center our approach to Israel in a concept called Shivyon Erech Ha'adam, or Shivi, also known in English as the equality of human value. What the current Israeli government is doing, especially with the judicial system shakeup, the way they are treating LGBTQ+ and other minority groups, this is the exact opposite of what we strive for. What currently is happening will widen the gaps of discrimination, and doing so will lead to further departure from the ideal Israel we all strive for. We all of us, as diasporic Jews and allies, have a responsibility to use our privilege to condemn the actions and help support those facing increased oppression. We as HDNA, we as Camp Gesher, commit to doing what we've always done, educating the youth, to embrace the progressive values we stand for, to bring the lens of Shivyon Erech Ha'adam when talking about Israel and when talking about how we want to treat other people. We as a youth movement focus on the youth as the future, and we appreciate all your continued support in helping enable youth to lead the future and counter the world we live in, counter the sometimes scary and hard to grapple complexity of the world we live in. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonah. Going over right now to Ben Moraine, the Executive Director of New Israel Fund of Canada. Hi, Ben.
Hi, everyone. So glad to see so many familiar friends and faces. Thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you to JSpace for taking the lead and putting this together. My quick words are just to remind us both of what the New Israel Fund does and a story of a victory that we won against all odds that maybe will give us a little bit of hope. If you remember back in 2018, when the Netanyahu government at the time thought it could deport tens of thousands of African asylum seekers seeking refuge in Israel from genocide. And at that time, the Israeli government, Netanyahu's government, also had a majority government, also had all the support necessary, also had benefited from years of vilifying a population of refugees from genocide. And this was not an issue that it seemed that Israel largely cared about, Israelis largely cared about. But in the middle of, in early 2018, there was a rally planned in central Tel Aviv. Actually in the neighborhood of Tel Aviv, South Tel Aviv, where asylum seekers often went, a poor and dilapidated neighborhood, long neglected, where Netanyahu had often stood on stage next to people from that neighborhood saying like, oh, well, the asylum seekers are to blame for all your problems. And what was remarkable in that moment is as we were prepared to accept that maybe the Israeli government would indeed do this, what instead happened was that there was an organized rally put together by grassroots organizations in Israel, funded by the New Israel Fund, and put together with an emergency grant by the New Israel Fund, that on stage, asylum seekers from Africa and Mizrahi feminists and human rights activists from all over the country and Arabs, Palestinian citizens of Israel stood on that stage and said, actually, we are united. We share this neighborhood. We both belong here. We both believe that we are neighbors, and that this attempt to divide us is not only disingenuous, but it's absolutely wrong. And in that moment, in those months, we saw Tel Aviv, El Al pilots refuse to fly their planes, sign a petition refusing to fly their planes to deport African asylum seekers back to Israel. We saw Holocaust survivors coming out to say that this was far too close to home of the things that they had seen in their lifetimes. We saw school systems taking in African asylum seekers. There was an outpouring of people who had not yet really been activated, people who are not really part of, say, the human rights activist professional camp. Kind of like what we're seeing right now. And what happened in that moment is actually Netanyahu had all the power in the world to execute his policy, and he failed. He went on TV the very next day to say, I'm sorry, I cannot, I'm so sorry, primetime TV, to say, I'm sorry, I can't deport these 50,000 asylum seekers to Africa. I can't pull it off. And you know who's at fault? The New Israel Fund. Their shadowy conspiracy of progressive left organizations like the feminists and the human rights NGOs and all of them, they're to blame why we can't deport all these asylum seekers. And within the next 24, 36 hours, over 1,000 Israelis made a first-time donation to the New Israel Fund. This is who the New Israel Fund is in a story. We're the largest supporter of human, civil, and social rights organizations across the full breadth of social issues in Israel. We support Israeli NGOs that, like Omdim B'Yachad and some of the other ones that we've seen in the scope of these protests. We fuel them, we fund them. We can't make decisions for Israelis, but we can choose where our philanthropy goes, and we can choose which Israelis get our support. So my invitation to you all is to support the work of, say, Sally and other organizations like Omdim B'Yachad by making a donation to the New Israel Fund of Canada. That's our work and that's our purpose. And over the next year, if you want to support directly Israelis on the ground, the professionals advancing the pushback across all kinds of pieces of this, then please find your way to the New Israel Fund of Canada. We're proud to be a partner with all of these organizations tonight. And we're really, really appreciative for Meital and for Joe, your leadership in putting this together. Kol hakavod. Back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ben. Wonderful. I also just want to quickly mention some of our partners that don't have a speaker here tonight, but that have given us a lot of support and a lot of assistance. Thank you to Meretz Canada. Thank you to Shomer Tzeir Camp Shomria, and thank you to Camp Miriam. Very quickly from JSpace, because you've been hearing from me all night. What we do at JSpace, there's some conversations in the chat and things get heated around these conversations. Let's have those conversations. We invite them. We love them. We want to hear from everyone. We want to challenge ourselves and we want to challenge you. We cannot do that work without your support. I do hope that you consider visiting JSpaceCanada.ca/donate and making a donation. If you do so before this coming Shabbat, if you donate at least $18, you will get one of those pins that you saw folks wearing at our in-person event, Vekulanu Oritan. Make sure you fill out your address in the form so that we can send that over to you. And it is because of your support, and it is because you care, and it is because we can challenge each other and we can argue, for heaven's sake, that we continue to do this work. I'm going to go very quickly to Re'ut, who tells me that people are getting very cold on the ground and she wants to go home. So I'm going to go over to her. She can show us what's happening in the end. At the end of the vigil in Toronto. I hope you leave here tonight feeling a little more optimistic, a little less alone, and a little more hopeful. Od lo avda tikvatenu. We still have not lost our hope. We still have not lost our hope. Re'ut, where are you?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. So I am experiencing some sort of a brain freeze, I believe. You know, I'm Israeli. I'm not adjusted to these temperatures, and I guess I never will. We had, you know, estimation said around 250 people here. It was so exciting. For times I was with tears in my eyes and actually felt the hope in my heart. We sang, people were talking, we sing songs. We had a group of guys who came and screamed, "Free Palestine." We invited them. We said, just listen to what we want to say. Just listen to us. So really exciting interactions with people. And it's just the beginning. It is just the beginning. And we won't stop until we see a change. I can promise you that.
Awesome. Ruth, thank you so much. To everyone who joined us and stuck with us tonight through the technical difficulties, thank you so much. Toda, shukran, thank you. Laila tov, good night. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.